What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Thee CrazyFaceUno Podcast, where everyone has a story and everyone's story matters. What's your story? If you'd like to support the show and help us tell more stories like the one you're about to hear, please visit CrazyFaceUno.com today. There, you can purchase items from our online store and donate. As always, I'm your host, Shane McNeely, and boy, are you in for a treat today. It is my honor and privilege to introduce our guest today. Please welcome Adam Palumbo, Part 2. Welcome back, Adam.
Thank you. Part 2.
Part 2,
this is unexpected.
Unexpected. My Part 2s are generally pretty unexpected for me as well. So sometimes we just have good conversation and I want to keep it going. So Adam,
let's keep it rolling.
We just did about an hour and 10 minutes, Part 1. So if you've listened to Part 1, welcome to Part 2. We talked a lot about, you kind of caught us up on life, and we talked a lot about the restaurant industry and kind of COVID-19 and some of the things that you love and some of the struggles that you've had with the work that you're in today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, it's an interesting time to discuss that too. Just like due to the fact that it's like I'm not able to work right now. It's wild to like think, just to think through it all and like reflect on it. But no, it's cool. It's appreciate to be able to share what I do and maybe give a little perspective to folks who don't, may have not really like ever heard about what it really is like for, full-time bartender, full-time server.
Yeah.
The fact that it is like people's real job, know, and I think some of it is like the stigma of it too. That's like personally hard to deal with sometimes, where I guess I'd say in the last few years, some of what we were talking about earlier with like the increase in restaurants' popularity and the social media presence and celebrity chefs, and like, food is all over TV now in a way that it never has been in the past. And the fact that you can literally be a celebrity chef, and have that kind of presence and
thank you, Anthony Bourdain, I would say.
Yeah. But like, it's so now I think people are starting to see like, oh yeah, this is a viable career option.
Mm-hmm.
But it I think the general consensus still in a lot of America is that this is a job that people do in between something, like, oh, you're a student, you're going to college, whatever. And I still even, admittedly, I'll wrestle with that. Like, what am I actually doing like with my life? Is this what I want to do forever? Can I do this forever? And you kind of always have those conversations with yourself, it's,
sure.
Yeah, it's just an interesting place to find yourself, liking what I do and appreciating what I do. And at the same time, like, I have coworkers who they're just as good of a bartender as me, and they're making their way through college. And, they're like 24 years old. And I'm like, man, like,
wow.
what I was doing when I was 24, and kind of like, it just makes you think and consider like all the direction they're headed in. And here I am, like, I'm sometimes you feel a little old. Your body makes you think that, and what you consider in life at like at the point that I'm in now,
Yeah. I think about that, now too. For me, it might look a little bit different for me than for you, but the piece that I can really connect with what you're saying is, when people ask, and we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, and I've brought this up, but the conversations around, America in general, we tend to put a lot of stock in, quote, our careers and what people are doing, and it's a value piece that we look at someone in America. I feel like, at least, that the conversation is, it's the first thing you ask somebody that you meet most times, right? What do you do? What do you do for a living? What's your occupation? What do you do for work? And it's like who we are is supposed to be synonymous with what we do. And like who you are and your, I don't know, it's this like appreciation, purpose, value that we put a lot of stock in the thing that we spend the most time in most of the time, we put that stock. So it's not that it doesn't warrant that. It just also is part of, I don't know. There's more to our world. There's more to you. There's more to me than what we do. But for me, when people ask, what are you doing? I'm still working to be, quote, I think everybody wants to be successful, right? Everybody wants to feel successful. Everybody wants to, like, you ask that question, you're like, well, I'm the founder and CEO of, whatever, or I am this and that. And it's not that easy. And it definitely affects my head when I have those conversations. And, we had a conversation before we got going, but this is what I'm doing full time. I'm right now, financially, I'm not the person bringing money into my family. My wife is, and I love that. I think it's awesome. It's amazing, but it's interesting. It plays with the psyche of who I am as a man, as a family member, as a husband, and the things that I want out of life. And, it brings to question, for me at least, my value, and what am I doing? I want to contribute to the world. I feel that I have talents and skills and the drive and the ability to make a difference in this world. And, it's funny because perspective's everything, and how people perceive you can be very different than how you perceive your own self. And I find myself putting these little disclaimers when I say, well, I founded, I started the storytelling brand. That's usually what I say. And, very quickly after me saying something like that, generally the question steers towards, how do you make money doing that? And, it's a thing that doesn't need to be a negative thing, but in my head, I feel that it is, or I feel that people are going to think that. And so I try to, come up with some, excuse, or, I do this, my wife's kicking ass, and, whatever, but I don't need to feel that way, right? Like, I'm happy if I'm happy and you're happy, and whatever your job is. There's just a lot of misconceptions, I think, specifically in the food and beverage industry, and working at a restaurant and whatnot. And it is synonymous with this idea that it's the side hustle, it's the side gig, it's the, it's because of time, maybe, it's a lot of evenings most of the time. And that's probably one of the big reasons that I'm not in it right now, is that I value my time with my wife and my family, and I don't want to be away from her, for those long periods. And I want to have kids someday, and I want to be able to have that, time with them. And it's not that you can't do both. It's just what's important to you and what's not.
Yeah.
I said a lot there. I'm sorry. I went on a little tangent, but.
No, man, it's all good. I mean, it's things that I think about pretty often, the attachments to, like how you see yourself, your own self-worth and self-esteem, and how much you wrap up with your, vocation and career. And it's like, I see both sides, man. And I feel like that's a blessing and a curse for me. Is I'm definitely a person that sees both sides. Totally. I've never been a person to be like very, take a hard line stance on like one way or the other in many aspects of life. And career is one of them, never been a person to be so monetarily driven that affects my decision making with, how I'm making the money that I am making. And so I think that's what led me into things like Invisible Children in the first place. Was because I definitely wasn't doing it to make money. Yeah.
But our value and our purpose was unmatchable. There's no, like, we had so much value. Like, we really did. If we didn't show up, yeah, there's probably other people that could have showed up and done the same job, but it had so much purpose and so much value at Invisible Children, the things that we did, and it affected a greater cause that we were all there for.
Yeah, it really did. It truly did. And that was the thing. That was the that was the personal payoff with
Yes.
the satisfaction of what you were a part of and what you were accomplishing, what you were contributing to
Yes.
the world. And yeah, that can't necessarily be replaced with a paycheck. But then when you leave that world and the reality of the way that this, society operates, it's like, you got to be responsible. You got to pay your bills, and I think about, like your family and everything. And it's like, the career that I have right now doesn't line up with good hours to like be a father.
Right.
And so it really is like a gut check for me sometimes. It's like, well, how long can I do this? Because, if I want to have kids, I got to try to get on more like a 9-to-5 schedule,
right.
know? There's plenty
and yet
of
at the
people
same time, there's plenty. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm going to say. There's plenty of people in the restaurant and food and, chefs and bartenders that are raising families and doing it successfully, and it's just finding what works for you and finding what works for each individual and the things that matter. And for me, that's, that was one of my lessons. And one of the things that I learned when I left Invisible Children is that I need boundaries, and I want boundaries from my work. And I think that that's one of those boundaries that I found over the years that is really important to me. Is, man, even working from home, my wife, she's working right now, and she'll probably work till 6:30 tonight, and that's like prime time, right? If I was to go and work and be a bartender or be a waiter, that's where you make your money. That's your bread and butter, is that like 3 to 4 o'clock till close, So it's it makes things interesting, and there's plenty, like you said, like we've said, like there's plenty of people that are making it work. It's just knowing what you value and what matters to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if that's the way, you want to like make it work and adjust your life to do so. I mean, it is possible, but it's harder. It's just an extra hurdle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
It is, and it's just something to really consider. Moving down the road.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I think I've heard, you mention it a little bit in some other episodes and some of the friends and people that I've listened to, who come from the whole Invisible Children family.
Yeah.
It is like a very weird, process of going from that world of work where there was such a deep meaning from it and a deep satisfaction, even though there were so many sucky days. And what you're saying, the no boundaries. It's just the stuff that you tolerate when you were in it because you believed in it so much. There was a lot of stuff that just wasn't healthy, and
of course.
You and I and the limited to no boundaries. Yeah.
You and I and the Invisible Children community can sit and pick apart things for days. I mean, for sure, right? Like, we can pick at things. There's things that I wasn't happy about, but that's everywhere. That's anything. But at the end of the day, for me, it was huge, and it was a really hard transition out of.
Yeah, because you don't necessarily have. I can only speak for myself, right? I think I've heard it, from some other guests that I resonate with when I heard him say it.
Yeah,
I don't have the same deep sense of meaning from bartending as I did when I was working on Invisible Children.
And so it's
hard. I do. Yeah. I do. Same. And that's something I've had to learn about myself, and that I'm trying to find the balance in it, it's not the end all be all, and I might not ever find a job that gives me that deep sense of meaning. But like, I think it was like Timmy Harris who was on, and he was saying, like, you know, about some of the memories of, you know, invisible children. It was like, you know, he said, I haven't thought about it too much in the last couple of years because I think he said something to the effect like he dwelled too much in the past and thinking about it, that it wasn't going to get better than that. Mm-hmm. And I think I definitely have wrestled with those very same feelings and thoughts. Yeah. You know, when you're just like kind of trudging through restaurant work and you're grinding, and it's like, man, you know, like this is not like what that was. So, you know, and it's kind of like, where am I heading, and what am I, like, really, what am I striving towards or working towards, you know? Yeah. And so it's just trying to find that meaning and that value in other places. And maybe like for some folks, their vocation gives them that, and that's an amazing thing. Totally. And I think I got good advice years ago from a mentor who was like, yeah, that can happen, but it's very rare. You know, it's very rare that your vocation is gonna give you that deep sense of like meaning in life. And so there's nothing wrong with finding it in other areas of life. For some people it's family, for some people it's hobby. You know, like there's definitely like other ways to find that, even though it may or may not come from your vocation. Yeah. I think if I had to choose it, I would love for my, say, 40 hours a week or 40 plus hours a week of what I do to pay the bills gives me a deep sense of meaning and satisfaction. Mm-hmm. But I think I'm still on the search for that, I guess.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I mean, once you've tasted that sweet nectar of purpose and value, and, you know, for us, that was Invisible Children. And I think that it's really hard to put that genie back in the box. Mm-hmm. And I had this conversation with a lot of, you know, everybody listening, you know, like I've had a lot of guests from Invisible Children on this podcast. And in the beginning, before I really started to structure the podcast about the origin story of childhood, adolescence, you know, high school, you know, post-high school, college, whatever that looked like, and then current day. And when I started structuring it that way, it gave people, I think, understood what I was talking about and having them on. But I had a lot of, you know, straight up, I had a lot of people from the IC community that's like, I don't really need to talk a lot about Invisible Children anymore. And really kind of saying that is like, I don't want to talk about it, you know, like I'm in a good place. I've moved beyond, and I moved past that. And I think that for a lot of us, we struggled deeply and hard. And I know I went through many seasons. I've gone through those seasons of depression and sadness and questioning, what am I doing with my life? You know, is this what I want to be doing? Is this all there is? Is this, you know, is there more? Can I have more? You know? But I know, I think you listened to Bethany's podcast, and I remember mentioning to her, like, I'm still working through some of that. You know, there's little things that pop up and I go, oh, I haven't dealt with that yet, you know? And the Coney 2012 stuff and that period of time and spring of 2012 was one of the most difficult times, you know, I've gone through. And I've gone through some difficult times in my life, but it's different. It's special. And it really, really hurt, you know, to have some of those attacks and some of those different things. And maybe some of our listeners don't know, but understand, but just search Coney 2012 and you'll figure it out pretty quickly. But that time was difficult, you know, and it really brought to question your resolve in some ways. And then coming on the other side of that and just being like, whoa, okay, you know, this means a lot to me. And then you leave Invisible Children completely and you go, what did I just do? You know, I just put all this time and energy, and we didn't give financially, but we gave of our time, which was the financial thing, you know. And I don't know about for you, but I look at that and I go, man, I spent almost 3 years at Invisible Children, and I wouldn't change it for a second in the world. But I also put myself financially 3 years behind the rest of my peers and the rest of the world.
Yeah,
and, for you were there for a long time as well. And it's like, man, you look at that and you go, well, shit, now what? Like I can still start a career, of course, but it's that you start looking around you and it's almost like you feel out of place and you feel like you don't belong in some ways. And yet you've gone through this thing that's changed your life and made you a better person for it. And here you are, now what?
Yeah. It's just, it's an interesting place to find yourself, and, thankfully, not alone in it though.
Yep.
Like I said, like I did have some great people around me, why I stayed in San Diego for, for all these years and stuff. It was like, because I wanted to hold on to those relationships and navigate that awkwardness, with some other people,
Yeah.
And granted, life looks vastly different than I mean, in San Diego is nothing like it was.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Then, that was also like a really interesting, like time and season in life to see all of the friends and the people I had in San Diego. A lot of them don't live here anymore.
Right.
It's a transient city as it is. And because so many people came to San Diego just to work in Invisible Children, and when their time was up or that season was up for them, they like went back home or took other jobs, in different states and got married and, have families and all this stuff. So then, so then you're like left like, well, I'm still here. What am I still doing here? And that's just been something that like has been interesting and unique for my, my own story, I guess, and time here. So.
Yeah. And then it's that perception of other people as they've left and gone and they're quote, making it quote, and looking at those people going like, oh man, it's the social media issue, right? Is that we only see the happy things.
We follow everybody on like Instagram and Facebook. Like
they got their shit together. Look at them. Yeah. Like,
we don't talk to each other per se anymore. Yeah. And then like the 6 years, 8 years, 10 years goes by, and I guess like you kind of have your perceptions of where people are at, but unless you really have a conversation like this, you don't always really get to know the depths. And for sure, it's like I appreciate people being honest and open and vulnerable on social media, but by and large, I mean, it's just it is the highlight reel.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
It
it's
too.
Like, I'm on a cool hike, or I'm on a walk with my dog, and it's like these are the fun things that I like to do. Or hey, check it out, I made this new drink and it made it on like the cocktail menu at work.
Yeah.
It's the highlight reel,
For sure. What they don't see is behind the voice, right? Especially like right now. I'm wearing a shirt and some athletic shorts and barefoot. I'm sweating a little bit, I may or may not have showered in the last 3 days. I don't know.
Dude, we all have a I don't know what you call it. We have a past, so like, this
quarantine
way of living in quarantine. Yeah.
Quarantine life's disgusting, let me tell you.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm still moving.
Oh, wow.
I'm not exercising as much as I'd like, but I mean, having a dog is great because you at least, have to be on her schedule and go outside for walks. And, the bare minimum, I'm doing that, which is good.
Same.
Yeah.
Well, Adam, thanks again for doing part 2. We talked a little bit about it. We met at Invisible Children. You live in San Diego, California. Still, you're working in the restaurant industry. You work for a company called Ironside. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Ironside Fish and Oyster.
Yeah, Ironside Fish and Oyster is the restaurant that I work at, and it's part of a larger company in San Diego called Consortium Holdings.
Cool.
So they have like a bunch of bars and restaurants all over San Diego.
Awesome. we've kind of dove pretty deep into some of that and your current day, and we've talked a little bit about Invisible Children. Let's keep this going and let's throw it back and learn a little bit more about your life growing up. How would you describe your childhood? What was childhood like for Adam Palumbo?
Childhood. It was good. It was kind of storybooky in a sense.
Sure.
I'm really grateful that I had a good childhood. I can definitely say that. That's not the case for everybody. My parents, they stayed together. My parents are still married. And awesome. I have one brother and one sister. So I'm the middle.
Nice.
And as a typical middle child, I'm very much the peacemaker.
Nice.
And there's a whole lot to unpack there that I'm still learning about in my adult years. But to stick with the childhood theme, it's just I grew up in a small town in New England, in Massachusetts, and I was pretty lucky to live in a small rural town.
Okay.
And just spent a lot of time outdoors, running around in the backwoods. Was in Boy Scouts, would ride dirt bikes here and there.
Yeah.
Road bikes all around town. And it was just it's a safe environment. It was it wasn't the kind of place that I had to worry about. My parents didn't have to worry too much about where we were going to be and everything like that. So
yeah.
We were close knit, I'm only 3 years younger than my sister, but then there was a big gap between me and my younger brother.
Cool.
He's 8 years younger than me.
Nice.
That's
a big gap though. My mom and her brother were 10 years, and I've heard some stories from her about that gap and what that was like, and having a little brother running around.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think because my sister and I, by the time we were kind of finishing high school, going into college, and that whole thing, my brother was kind of just in such a different stage in his life, and I think my brother and I grew a lot closer to each other later in life because you just have a little bit more similarity. Yeah. Once someone graduates from high school and that age gap kind of lessens as you both grow older and get into your 20s and stuff like that.
For sure. Yeah, I was an only child growing up, but I have a stepbrother and sister that came along my senior year of high school. And they were young, super young, and it's been the same. Now they're both 21, and it's different. Our relationship has gotten exponentially better as they've gotten older. It's just more in common, more things to talk about, more commonalities, and more life experiences that we can share.
Yeah, for sure. It's so that was an interesting dynamic where I was really stoked about having a younger brother.
Yeah.
And I was kind of I saw the camaraderie of some other brothers, that I was friends with. And I'm oh man, it'd be so cool. We're going to do all this stuff together.
For sure.
But then I think it was in third grade when my brother was born. And so, but you don't realize how much of a gap that is in life.
Yeah.
So as I was in, middle school, and he's just this little toddler kid, running around, and it's not and then when I started hanging out with my friends in high school, it's my brother was still so young. It wasn't I was inviting him out to come hang out with me and my friends in high school,
right?
Or go ride bikes together and do that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, my sister and I had a unique experience because we were homeschooled together for a while.
Oh, cool.
So let's see, I was homeschooled from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So middle school years, I was homeschooled, and my sister was having a hard time in high school. She just kind of had some bad, like friendship dynamics.
Yeah.
And some like kids are just like, high school kids are cruel and mean to each other.
The worst.
And so she just was kind of over the social side of high school. And my mom had already started to homeschool me in 6th grade. So she gave my sister the option, like, you could always come and finish high school at home if you want. Like, you don't have to go to this school that you don't like, and, you feel uncomfortable and stuff. So she gave her that option, and she did. So for her, the last 2 years of school, junior and senior year of high school, she was homeschooled. And
nice.
So, so my sister and I kind of had this like funny experience where like the two of us would be home doing our homework and stuff and doing our schoolwork, but we also, because we were homeschooled, we could do other things that some kids didn't get to do, like go to the local pizza shop for lunch. And on Fridays, our gym class, we'd go to the skating rink and go ice skating for our physical fitness class or whatever, when the rink is totally empty and no one's on the ice at 10 a.m. on a Friday,
That's awesome.
So there was some cool stuff like that where, I mean, don't get me wrong, we definitely had some big fights, like being stuck together in the house like that. But overall, I think it deepened our relationship in a cool way. And, my sister started getting more independence, and she got her license and got a car. And so I would kind of tag along with her places, and she would drive me back and forth to youth group at our church and stuff like that. So, I would say I contribute those couple of years of being homeschooled together, like really, like deepening that relationship between me and my sister, even though I would drive her nuts all the time.
For sure.
So
what did you say you wanted to be when you grew up?
The first thing that comes to mind was an engineer.
Nice.
I think I remember in like 5th grade, I had this idea that I wanted to be an engineer. Yeah. I don't know really where that came from, because I grew up where I went to college. Actually, there was a tech school.
Okay.
Down the road, WPI.
Nice.
Worcester Polytech, and I had friends who went to that school. And man, when I was in college, I was so glad that I wasn't facing the kind of pressure and the intensity of the coursework that they had going.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had a pretty intense coursework too, because I ended up doing biology.
Nice.
For undergrad, anyways. But definitely not as intense as engineering. But yeah, I wanted to do that. I had like a real fascination with like jets and like being a pilot or something like that.
Cool. It's like one of my favorite questions, because I feel like it's like everybody had something that you said you wanted to be, from the stereotypical, like, I want to be a firefighter or a policeman, to, what was one of my guests? He said he wanted to be like a dump truck driver, when he was little. Astronaut too, whatever it is. It's like, it's so fun to like kind of bring yourself back and put yourself back in the shoes of the little version of yourself and think about those things that you wanted to be when you grew up.
Yeah. And I don't even think I knew what an engineer did.
Right.
I think the only thing that I relatively understood is that an engineer built things, or some engineers do, if you're like a structural engineer or something. And I mean, I liked Legos, so maybe I thought, because I like Legos and I put things together with Legos, I'm gonna like to do that as an adult and like build real things.
It's probably like Uncle Bill was over and you were playing Legos and they were like, you should be an engineer, you're great at building things, and then there it was, like the seed was planted.
Who knows? I remember this like manila envelope I had in 5th grade, and I wrote something about engineering on it, and I put like the cogs, like the like 2 cogs on a wheel that go together.
Sure.
I drew like 2 of those, cog wheels going together, and put like engineering or something on the folder. And I remember I had that in 5th grade, like my image of, this is my I don't know, like the start of my engineering ideas or something like that. You know?
That's awesome. That's awesome. I remember when there was I think it was like second grade, I helped orchestrate and put together a class, or like it was just like a newspaper. So one article newspaper is like 5 pages, you know. My dad printed them off for me, and me and my friends in like second grade, we'd sit at like our recess time. I think it was winter time, and we'd write these articles, you know, or we'd like look at all right, we need, you know, this song or this, you know, thing, or I don't know. It was like the comic, you know, there's like the classic newspaper things that you wanted, a couple articles that like we wrote, and then like put it all together. And I think about, I don't know why that popped in my head, but it's like those silly things, those little things when you're a kid that that you do, and I think back with that, and I think that's so funny. I remember like there was some song that we had in there. It was, I don't know if it was like Grandma got ran over by a reindeer or whatever, because it was like Christmas time. I remember.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just so random stuff, but it's just fun to think about.
Oh man. Yeah, that was a fun song to sing when you were a kid.
Yeah. You thought it was like the worst thing ever too as a kid.
Yeah, like you would sing it with your friends, but you couldn't sing it around your mom.
Yeah,
whatever, you know?
You thought that you'd get in trouble or something. But
yeah.
That's so funny.
Definitely.
What kind of student would you say you were growing up?
I was a good student. I was pretty meticulous.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did well in school. I think I just, for whatever reason, like my personality type, I'm very, like, I like things to be structured and orderly.
Yeah.
I was a good kid as far as like obeying authority. So I didn't really have a ton of problems, you know, like obeying my parents or respecting them. And so I kind of took that down, like down the line, meaning I respected my parents, I respected my teachers, I respected my scout leaders, and you know,
yeah.
I had a greater respect for adults in my life. And
That's awesome.
I think that led to me falling in line with traditional public school. You know, I know that's not the case for everybody.
Yeah.
And like, you know, I was a teacher for a little while, so I feel like I have a deeper understanding now that, you know, school worked for me just because of the structure that I had in my life and with my parents.
Yeah.
And I bought into the idea that like, oh, you get good grades and this is going to be the outcome, you know, like all of that. So I wouldn't say I was very like naturally gifted in just like knowing information, especially when it got to the high school level.
Sure. Like
some people are just, they have a natural inclination for mathematics or sciences or whatever.
Those people bum me out.
Yeah. That definitely wasn't me. I studied. Like if I was supposed to read something, I would read it and I would figure it out. Like I had good, I guess, reading comprehension. And so I could regurgitate information and pass the tests and get through with good grades, you know. And that kind of increasingly, after freshman year of high school, that incrementally declined. I think I got like A's and B's across the board for years. And then come like, I don't remember if it was sophomore or junior year, I got my first C. And I think I was just I guess I wasn't caring as much, and like being so meticulous about my grades. And like I remember like I didn't feel good about it, but at the same time I was like, man, I've had like A's and B's like my whole life. It's like, it's a C. It's not going to really kill me, is it? You know? And sophomore year in high school was a big turning point for me because I put myself out there after going middle school, a very awkward time for a lot of kids, being homeschooled. Yeah. And then I went back to public school in 9th grade, freshman year. Yeah. And that was kind of just like a reorienting myself to what it's like to be in traditional school again.
Yeah.
And then sophomore year, I kind of came out of my shell. As far as like, I started playing sports, I started playing football. I was joining, student council committees and student advisory committees and prom committee and doing all this stuff. And then I got like really involved in high school, and I kind of was the poster child for your like, what do they say? Well-rounded, academic, resume. So, I just bought into the whole thing, like played football. But I was also a Boy Scout, and I also played like drums in a hardcore band, and I was a skateboard.
Yeah.
So I felt like I had my hand like in all these different places. Whereas like, the high school movies that are like really funny and corny that like we all kind of probably have like a fond high school memory that we like from Hollywood.
Yep.
And it's like they play on the stereotypes, right? Like you have the jocks, you have the nerds, you have the stoners and the skaters and all that. And I look back and I'm like, man, I had a really unique perspective, because I really did have a hand in almost all of it.
Yeah.
Like I
feel similarly, Adam. I was in, I was in drama. I was in our play. I played sports. I was a wrestler, a soccer player. The academic world, I would say, was probably the one area that I kind of let slip and didn't care or give as much attention to. But I mean, friends group wise, I think it helped that I went to a small, very small school. I mean, graduating class of 120.
Dude, that was exactly the same for me.
Yeah. So you knew everybody.
That same size.
Yeah. You had these relationships with people from every different little group. Like I wanted to fit in. I had maybe a different experience, but middle school was really hard for me. I moved to the place I moved in Indiana, Sullivan, Indiana, going into 7th grade, and that 7th, 8th grade in this small town that just really pushed back against who I was and me those 2 years. And then for me, and maybe you can relate to this a little bit too, but for me, going into freshman year of high school was actually better. I stopped getting bullied. I stopped getting, harassed as much as I was, because we were all small fish in a big pool, and I was no longer the focus. It was sink or swim, and everybody was looking to survive, in 9th grade. But it was an interesting experience for me, for sure. But I can really relate to that.
Yeah, man. I had a very, I guess like there was like freshman year for me was definitely like weird and difficult. And I felt like a fish out of water for probably like the first half of the year, because I spent these years being homeschooled. I did have a good friendship group though, because I was really involved at like church and youth group. Yeah. And so even though some of the friends that I had in school, those friendships kind of fell away, I still had this like really great group of friends at youth group. Yeah. And in Boy Scouts and stuff as well. So I wouldn't say I was a socially awkward kid in those years being homeschooled, because I did still have friendships. But then I went to high school, and it was like kids that were my friends in, say, like 5th grade. Yeah. Then three years go by of middle school, and then they're like potheads, and I was like, whoa, wait, like we used to just like ride bikes together and stuff. Yeah. And now you smoke weed. And it was like, as like being in 9th grade and being a pretty sheltered kid growing up in like a Christian house, I was like, oh, I guess I can't hang out with that kid anymore. Yeah. Right. Cause he smokes weed, and that's not cool. So yeah, that was definitely a weird transition. And then I kind of had to find this like new friendship group. And like I said, and then by sophomore year, I was like trying out for the football team, and like had a girlfriend, and
finding your place,
like that kind of stuff. Yeah. So then I was just like, I was like Mr. High School from that point,
Yeah, sure.
Just and like the same thing, being a small school, if you're likable, it's pretty easy to be popular,
Yeah. And athletic and academic, I would say both. Just the extracurriculars in general, I think, really set you apart, or like kind of define, at least for me, like kind of define where you landed in those social circles and like how you were perceived?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say definitely like in a like small town America, small high school. It's like, if you buy into it, like you can excel, whether it's one way or the other, whether it's in sports and academics or,
band, choir,
band, all that stuff is there, which is cool. It was the typical American liberal arts education, and I like looking back on it. I think I definitely played by the rules, and I think I should have had a little bit more fun. I think I didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't, push boundaries too much. I mean, granted, I definitely
you're a kid. But
I definitely did some stupid stuff, and got my parents like upset, and I got in trouble with some teachers for like minor stuff here and there.
Yeah.
But it was never like I was in like detention all the time,
right.
Like whatever. Like the principal knew me by name. I got like good recommendations from my guidance counselor. Like everyone had like all these big, hopes for me and whatever. So, but yeah, like looking back, like after you go through high school and college, it's like those formidable years. You're like, I don't know. I just think I took things too seriously for being, a 16-year-old, 17-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And I just should have gotten a little bit more trouble. I should have just lightened up a little bit and had some more fun.
Totally. And I feel the same way, man. I didn't get into a lot of trouble. Same things like my friends group. Like I didn't drink. The first time I ever drank or like did anything like that was going into my senior year. It was that summer. And I had seen, and I don't know how it was for you, but I had seen at my school, my little school, came in and it's just like, man, people are drinking and going to parties on the weekends, smoking weed, whatever it is. And I just saw them getting busted and it affecting sports were huge for me, so like that was the thing. I found my place in sports. And I think that it's really a big component of who I am. I love sports in general. I love being involved in athletics of all kinds, but I didn't want anything to hinder my ability to play sports. And I was like, nope, not going to do that. I mean, I can remember even my senior year, the one time that summer I did a little bit, but outside of that, I really didn't until all my sports were done. And I would go and I'd be the guy that went and picked people up, and like,
oh really?
Yeah. Like I would drive my friends to the party and drive them home, or whatever, because I didn't want to get caught. I didn't want to get in trouble. And
I was the straight edge kid.
Same.
So that was my thing in high school, where people would even call me like as a nickname. They would call me straight edge because that was again, like I was like way into church and
same. Yeah.
So when I got into high school, I think I was at that verge. Like I knew kids partied and like drank in high school. And so I was kind of thinking like, oh, maybe I would like try that and experiment and see what that's all about. Cause it was like, I knew that like I could, if I wanted to, so I remember trying to like think through that, like maybe like, would I go to a party? Would I have a beer if like someone gave it to me? And right around that time, my friend introduced me to like hardcore and that whole scene.
Sure.
And so like the straight edge movement was this whole big thing in hardcore at that time. This is like the late 90s, right?
Yeah.
And so once I got into that, it was like I was like, this is what I want to be about, you know?
Especially because it's funny how that straight edge and like that hardcore scene is also very closely tied with the, Christian church.
Yeah, like it is and it isn't.
It is and it isn't.
Like there's a lot that was the thing that was for me. Like I personalized like, oh, like I would go to these local shows with these bands, and like a lot of them were atheists, or like anti God, anti organized religion. but they were straight edge and they had that like sense of moralism and, taking care of their bodies and taking care of their minds. Mm-hmm. So it was like, we're going to be straight edge and promote this lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is so cool. Cause these guys, they don't even believe in God, mm-hmm. but they're still going to like, they're not going to drink and like, they're not going to like do drugs. And so it kind of endorsed this, like whether you believe in God or not, this seems like a really like a good path to be on,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I kind of embraced that, like because for me, it embodied my like Christian heritage and values and moralism. Right. But then it also was like cool and edgy because it was like, this is like hardcore. Yeah. Like this is, it's loud and it's aggressive and it's political and it like it gets in your face and, just rowdy and like the adrenaline and the, everything that is involved in that music. It's like this just like, that energy, especially when you're like an impressionable 15-year-old kid, and I grew up listening to Christian music, and then you go to this like live show and these guys are like just screaming like with everything in them, and it's like the guitars are just so loud and distorted, and there's just like a power and the energy behind it that you're just like, I want to be like in this in some way. It's
like a safe rebellion.
It is. I mean, exactly. It was and I think my way. I guess it was my way of rebelling. That's a good way to put it, where I wasn't getting in trouble with the cops and I wasn't getting in trouble with my parents, but it's like this like kind of like undercurrent,
a lifestyle
subculture
It's funny because I didn't really run into it until I got to college, and the group of friends that I ran around with, they kind of came from that scene, the straight edge kind of, that punk hardcore scene where they were involved in, they were the band, they were the bass, guitar, drummers, of those different bands, and kind of introduced me and some of our friends into that kind of group. And I don't say that I really loved it or that I still do. Like there's some that I do, there's some things that I like, there's some artists that I like, and like A Day to Remember, I don't know if that really fits in. It's kind of on the edge, but it was one of my favorites, in college.
Dude,
especially.
They're a Florida band.
Are they? I didn't know that.
I was actually out on this. I did one like month or like just over a month on a Warped Tour. With Invisible Children, and A Day to Remember was on Warped Tour that summer.
That's awesome.
And I would see them or hear them off in the distance pretty much every day.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I remember like the same song. They would always open up with the same like breakdown.
Yeah, I could almost tell you right now. I've got it playing in my head.
they get the beach balls out and everybody start like jumping up and down. Yeah. It was fun.
Yeah, I love that. That's so cool. But it's funny because I went to a very conservative Christian college, and it's funny to see that group of people and some of my friends that still, that was their roots in high school, especially that was their scene as well, and that I guess that's where I see that tie, of a lot of those people that I went to college with and still, still had that like Christian values. And I think it probably boils down to a lot of what you said with the values and that morality and the morals, that didn't matter what you believed necessarily. You were this group of people that was accepting and loved each other and kind of cared about each other. And yet like your lifestyle was different, and it was a way to kind of, I don't know, I see it as this like social rebellion, or this like, personal rebellion of some sort, kind of defining your own self and finding your own way at an early age.
For sure. I mean, there's all kinds of like different sects within it too. Like you had like the vegan straight edge movement,
right?
You had the Christian straight edge movement,
right?
So like it was, but I feel like overall, I think it was good for me.
Sure.
Yeah. Like I guess like if you have to pick one way or the other, do you want to, like do you want to drink too much in high school and learn the hard way, or have a DUI, or do you want to get involved with like a bunch of punk rocker kids who are like screaming their head off and like
having fun,
choosing not to do that or whatever, so that was like that I like definitely bought into that, and then down the road in college, like it was I didn't have a drink until I was 21.
Cool.
So that was like a kind of like a benchmark milestone for me.
Yeah.
but it was like, for me, it was just, personal evolution. And I didn't, what straight edge had represented to me at one point, I didn't really like want to affiliate myself with that title. And there was a lot of violence and, gangs coming out of the straight edge movement. And I was like, that's not what I'm about, and I don't want to be affiliated with that, so.
Cool.
Yeah. But,
what you said you majored in biology, is that correct?
Yeah.
What led you that direction?
Dude, I'm really sorry. Can I pause? And I gotta run to the restroom again. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go for it, man. No worries at all.
I'm just gonna put it on hold real quick. I'm sorry that
you're good, man.
We gotta do this.
You're good.
All right.
So we were just talking about you were a biology major, and what kind of led you the direction to choose biology?
I think so. In high school, finishing, and you're thinking about what you want to major in and study in college and everything like that. I think I made the decision that I wanted to be a teacher before I chose a major. And I just kind of like felt, education is the path I want to take, and I want to teach. So then it was a matter of like, what do I want to teach? And I had always done quite well in the, the science and like math side of school. And it was really just something that I felt would be more exciting to teach day in and day out and year after year, rather than teaching. I was thinking of my options, I was like, I can be an English teacher, a math teacher, history. And as far as the content was concerned, I felt the sciences offered, there's always new research coming out, new theories and things like that. Whereas English, you're gonna teach, A Tale of Two Cities every single year, or like you're gonna read George Orwell's Animal Farm every single year. You know what I mean? Like there's these texts that are, and same with history. History, you're gonna teach that same period of time. Or now we're on the unit for Civil War, or Reconstruction, or whatever it might be. So you have these units that you're gonna just repeat over and over again. And to me, it just seemed a little more interesting to study something that like there was new developments and advances in science, and you kind of tie that in. I mean, obviously like look at the world of genetics and DNA and how much more that, especially like when I was in high school and into college, I think when I was in college, the entire human genome was mapped for the very first time. So there was these kind of things that were just, that stuff was happening while I was studying it. And it made me think, this is going to be fun to teach as far as like, for that level. And because I was a good student and I had, done well in science, I felt, like I'll major in biology. That was my decision-making process when I was, 18 years old, finishing high school. And, but I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I had a rude awakening, I think, in college. It was difficult. It was definitely not, it was harder work than I thought it was going to be. And I was, looking to be a high school teacher, and the majority of my classmates in college were pre-med, pre-farm, they're going into biotechnology and very, just very specific scientific fields. And so it was a little intimidating for me, where I was thinking, well, how do I, this person's I had lab partners who were trying to get into med school. Like they're going to be doctors, and I'm just trying to like learn as much as I can to tell like high school kids, so the level of like my involvement was a little bit different. I felt I was in a different headspace.
Sure. And, you probably were.
I would say. And so I had I kind of had a back and forth with like studying biology. Is I think halfway through I was really considering changing my major. But then I was at that point too, where I was playing a lot of music. I wasn't playing sports in college. I really got very heavily involved in playing with bands and playing some shows, like a lot. You know, there was a time where I probably had a show at least once a month on the weekends, and, you know, just doing, you know, restaurant work on the side here, like part-time hours along with all that. And I got offers to join some bands full time, and nice. You know, the option of going on tour, you know, and doing it like for a full-time thing, and getting with a band that, you know, had like records out or like some label support and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I really, awesome. Yeah, I had to wrestle with that. You know, there was like some guys at this band that I loved and I looked up to, and they were, you know, they were out there on the road and they were building, you know, a name for themselves, and they needed a new drummer, and they gave me the offer. And I was really flattered. I was like, man, these guys like think I'm good enough to be in this band. You know? And so part of me definitely wanted to go that route, like move down to Connecticut and play with these guys and go on the road. And but then like my practical, you know, side kind of weighed out, and I was like, you know, I really should finish school. If I go play in this band, I don't know if I'll ever go back to college. Right. I'm already halfway done. I should just stick it out for 2 more years and finish. And yeah, so that's what I ended up doing. Is as much as I wanted to go play music and kind of pursue that, I just felt I think the most practical thing here is to stay in school and finish it out. So yeah, so I stuck with the biology degree, even though I wasn't loving it, and it was difficult for me. But then, you know, I finished it, and yeah, I have a bachelor's in science.
Feels so, good, like,
right? No one can take that away from me.
Exactly. You know? Yeah, that's cool. I love that you were a biology major. I was a nursing major coming into college, and so I was in a lot of those, you know, some of those same classes that you were in. And I was one of my best friends. He was in college. Joel Hartzell. He was I think he was a biology major that was pre-med though, and so he did all those same classes. And you know, he was pre-med, but he was majoring in biology, and it's that crazy workload. I remember, you know, the tests and the classes that he had to take from micro to macro biology to, you know, all that different stuff that was just wild and crazy that I didn't have to take part in. Thank goodness. I ended up changing my major anyway. But
yeah, dude. Or organic chem labs where like you like hear about that for, like you're a freshman and you hear about wait till you get to organic chem, it's gonna get so crazy. And yeah, the labs, I mean, I never was able to fit, the labs were so long, they're 4-hour blocks for organic chem lab. That's not including the lecture class period, you know. I could never fit in my schedule to have the 4-hour labs because I was always doing other courses. So I had to do my organic chem over the summer.
Ooh.
And dude, it was
that sounds terrible.
Because in New England, right, you have this very short summer, and the weather is just so nice, and it's like that one time a year you want to like try to go to the beach with your friends or go to some shows or whatever, and then I'd just be stuck in the, you know, these like beautiful days outside, and I'm stuck inside this lab. At least it was air conditioned. Yeah, but you're there for 4 hours, you know, gross, and then like you get out of the lab and you're like, I need to go eat something. You go have lunch, and then you're like, I have to write this lab report, which is going to take me another 2-3 hours, you know. And it was just this. That was brutal.
I get it. I
don't miss that.
I do not miss that at all. Right. There's been many times throughout my life post college that I go, man, maybe I should go back to school. And then I think about shit like that you just said, and I'm like, nope, like, no, thank you. Yeah, man. Dude. My junior year was similar like that. I had an 8 a.m. class 3 days a week. I went going to a conservative Christian college. I had chapel 3 days a week right after that. And so actually, you know what? It was 8 a.m. 4 days a week. It was Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, was my 8 a.m. classes, which just sucked. And then I also played soccer, and I also had a job. So I literally cut out like 20 minutes early out of my one of my hour classes once a week. that I would then go to work. I worked at the YMCA. I did their like after school program. So I'd do that for a few hours, and then I would run straight from there, hoping that the parents would be there to pick up their kids on time so I could get to soccer practice in time and not be late. 9 times out of 10 I was late. And then these were at like 6:00, right? So we're talking 6:30 by this point in time. My practice doesn't get over till 8:30. I haven't eaten, right? Like when I got to go eat just like you did. And then now I'm looking at 10:00. By the time I'm showered and ready to like, now I got to do my schoolwork. That year was one of the hardest years growing up, especially academically and everything, man. I don't wish that upon anybody.
You have to like respect. You respected what you did in going through that, but then like a lot of like life as an adult, is nothing nearly as crazy as that.
No,
and that's the bizarre thing is like schools like supposed to like train you for like adulthood, right? Which it doesn't. Yeah, but and then, like you get through that, and then you get like a 9-to-5 job or whatever. You kind of fall into your routine of adult life, and it's nothing as crazy as some of those times when you're in college and like working and volunteering or playing sports along with all of it. It's just
all while
you gotta respect the kids that are like 17, 18 years old. And they're just like grinding, you know, to get to that next level. I mean, did you see that Netflix show about, I don't know if it was called Cheer, maybe? It was just called Cheer. And it's this Netflix documentary about this like cheer team down south. Yeah. And just like what they go through like physically. And it's like that whole story of how hard you're working.
Totally.
You're like 20 years old and you're just every single hour of your day is scheduled, you know?
Right.
Like your sleep has to be scheduled, your study has to be scheduled, your class time, then your practice time. It's like, it's just, it's wild what, the college athlete goes through. Not even just athletes. I mean, college students in general, but I feel like that dynamic of playing sports alongside being a full-time student.
And I didn't even make it, like I wasn't even like, I never made varsity, in college. But I still put forth all that effort, all that time. But it's crazy, man. Like I'm the same way, all while trying to manage and trying to grow up, like your mind is still growing and trying to figure stuff out, manage the social circles that you're in. And, I mean, your relationships, whether they were, romantic relationships or just friendships, and I don't know, managing all of that time, man, what a lot to take in and remember and think about and go through.
Oof. Yeah, I'm glad I'm all that we were talking about is really why I didn't try to play sports in college. I mean, I went to Worcester State. It's a small state school. Okay. And pretty close to where I grew up. Like I actually lived at home and commuted. It was like a big time commuter school, which is a whole other unique college experience.
Sure.
Like it definitely was weird. I had actually the school that I went to, Worcester State, one of my high school teachers was a coach for the football team.
Oh, nice.
And so I remember senior year, he got all the football players together to talk about what it's like in a college program, you know? And I mean, this is like a small D3 school. It's not even like a massive program by any means. Totally. But he went over like what the demands were and the schedule. This is what you do in your off season for your gym and your lifting regimen. And then like when school's in session, this is what the schedule would be like daily. And, all that. And I was just like, whoa. I mean, you think like a high school schedule is intense for football. And then it just goes, basically it boils down to, you don't have time to do anything else but class and football.
And your whole life is planned out, scheduled out, especially at the higher levels.
I just didn't for me, it wasn't worth it. I didn't love it enough to want to commit to that sort of that level. And So yeah, I mean, probably for the better, because I mean, we all know that football and concussions are a terrible thing. So
you saved a few brain cells.
Yeah, I spared myself probably some brain injury. So yeah.
What was your next stage, or like how did you learn about Invisible Children, and kind of what led you there?
Yeah, so it was actually through like the music scene.
Okay.
So there's this band called Under Oath, and I like loved one of their records called Define the Great Line, and was just like really into that whole world of like heavy Christian music. And
didn't Under Oath just come out with a new album too recently?
They did like a year, 2 years ago, maybe. Yeah. They kind of like took a break and they came back.
Yeah.
And put a new record.
I know Under Oath. That's one of the names I know for sure.
Yeah, man, they're a big band as far in that whole world, in that scene. And but they had InvisibleChildren.com in the like inside of the CD, like the liner notes. Yeah. So that's what like brought me to the website for the first time.
So crazy.
And then so it was like I got exposed to some of the videos and stuff like that. What it was like to be a roadie. They had some like videos about the tour of being a roadie. And so that was my introduction. And then I didn't even see the main film for like like months later. I started talking about it.
Yeah.
I was actually dating this girl who kind of weirdly who grew up in she grew up in San Diego, but she was living in Massachusetts at the time.
Yeah.
And so we were going to church together and like dated briefly. And she got me a copy of the Invisible Children Rough Cut DVD.
Nice.
So that's how so I just watched it at my house, by myself for the first time, and got exposed that way. And and I just kind of like, then it was like this whole story of me showing it to my roommate Zach.
Yep.
And he was a high school teacher, and then his high school got very actively involved in Invisible Children and helped fundraise for their Schools for Schools program. So it was like I was kind of on the periphery of that and watching his students really get involved in it. And then we got to meet some roadies that came to his high school. And so I met the roadies. I met like Laren Poole, one of the founders of Invisible Children. He came to our house. So yeah, I was just like on that, like I was a supporter in that role and in that capacity for a little bit. And then after I met the roadies and talked to them a little bit and saw what it was more all about, I think the following year after that is when I applied over the summer to kind of start up in the following fall. Like my teaching career wasn't, really, I wasn't loving teaching. I finished college and I got into teaching 6th grade earth science full time for a little while. Cool. And they wanted me to come back the following year, and I something about it, I wasn't loving it. And so I was working for a restaurant over the summer while school was out of session, and just decided, I'm going to give this a go. I'm going to apply for this internship, and see what it's all about. And I think it wasn't even so much for me. It wasn't this pull for the issues in Uganda and what was happening. I mean, granted, that was moving and that was horrendous. And obviously I was like, that's not good. If I can do something about it, I want to. But personally, it was a deep spiritual conviction that I wanted to do something positive and something of worth and value. So it was a way for me to back up what I believed. You'll hear that term, like practice what you preach. And it was like this I kind of spent so much of my life just like believing all of this stuff and believing Christianity and what it meant and going to church and doing all this stuff, but I never felt like I was really doing something about my faith. So on a very personal level, the internship was about me like living out my faith and what I believed to be my faith at that point in time. And it was like that itch that had like, I'd always wanted to go out on tour and be on the road. Because like I said, I think that band asked me to join, and I didn't do that. Even though I never really toured extensively as a musician, it was like that same mentality, like get in the van,
100%.
load up the t-shirts. We're going to go out there and we're going to just grind. Yep. And that same mentality that you got to be like a small time touring band. It's that same, like that same spirit that you're taking out on the road, like with Invisible Children. So for me, it was like my way to, like, I always had kind of wanted to do something like that. And it gave me that opportunity, you know?
Yeah. That's so cool. Yeah. I've never thought about necessarily that being, I think that was my life in college. You know, I was very much active in just social justice issues, you know, feeding the poor and helping people. Like, it's just always been the theme of my life that I've, you know, kind of put myself in that position and align my vision and my life with helping others and doing good and making a difference and something beyond myself. And so I never really thought about it being like an arm of that, you know, necessarily, though it completely is. And without a doubt, it was one of those things for me as well. But yeah, it's very interesting. I also relate back to, you know, kind of earlier on with you being invited to the band, you know, and do you remember Sabrina Simmerhoff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Sabrina was one of my roadies, and her team was one that really pushed for me and my group of guys that I, you know, went to college with to join Invisible Children, and kind of had that opportunity. And you met Matt Muljan, I believe, right?
I did, yeah.
In 2009. So he was one of my friends, and he was a roadie that came in 2009. So like I had that group, and I'd made that decision my junior year to go back to school my senior year for the same thing, and kind of had written Invisible Children off after I graduated my senior year. And Sabrina showed up again and sent me a message, I think on Facebook it was, and it's like, hey, I know I've asked you several times, but would you reconsider? And so the rest is history.
Recruiting.
Yeah.
Totally. For sure. Yeah, man.
It's you know, I wanted to make time, and I know it's towards the end of our second part, and we haven't really talked about it a lot, but we've you probably know more people. You know, you for sure know more people at Invisible Children and that have came through those walls than I do, but you know, we've lost some great people that came through the Invisible Children walls, and I just want to kind of give, you know, them a shout out, and you know, the impact that they've had in our lives. And you know, I mentioned Matt Muljan. He's another one. He's someone that's no longer with us, and we've lost a few great people, and I'm really grateful for those relationships, for those people and the impact they've had on my life, including you know, Alex Collins, who we lost recently.
Yeah.
And sorry, man.
No, don't be sorry. Okay.
But this venture, you know, CrazyFaceUno, is really, those two people in particular are really a catalyst for me kind of pursuing this venture. And yeah, I just think it's really important to kind of highlight them and you know, maybe talk about them a little bit, or you know, the relationships that we had with these individuals. And I know there's several other people that I don't know as well, and that you are probably friends with, and that have lost their lives to suicide and, you know, some of the mental health issues that our country and our world is going through these days. But you know, I have a question that we'll get to eventually, but legacy, you know, is a question that I really think about, and something that I look back on and look at these different individuals and how their lives have affected mine, and how their legacies are lived out. And man, there's some giants that, you know, some people that, you know, we can't take for granted. And I just want to kind of shine a light on them. I know that you were friends with Alex, and probably a little bit closer to Alex than I was, for sure. And yeah, we've been through some things, Adam.
Yeah, man. No, I think it's it's difficult, but I'm glad that you are, remembering and honoring the lives of, the folks we've lost. And you never want to, it's more than just not wanting to forget about them. I don't think people are going to forget about these people, but yeah, like that impact, and and it's just important to share your own heart and your own like feelings and process it, because it never goes away, and it's a continual like grief and loss is this like it is a lifelong process, it just it carries with you. I said goodbye to Nate, and
Nate
years ago. That was the first my time at Invisible Children. That was like the first like massive loss of a friend leaving us, and being so like we've mentioned, that like intrinsic involvement in the lives of like the people you worked with and you lived with, and Nate was one of those guys that we worked together in Invisible Children, but we also lived together. Yeah. And like that bond, is like that much greater, because in a short window of time, you just get to know someone really, really well. Yeah. And you're both just like on board, and the kind of person that Nate was is just like so open and loving that he was just like a person that you easily connected to and easily became a good friend to, Yeah. I tell the story a lot that like before, I had spent some time in the UK with Invisible Children in like the London office in 2009. Right. And when I came back, is when I first met Nate. And I'm just going to switch over to the regular phone. So I came back to work in an office job. Yeah. And that's where I first met Nate. And probably within, I don't know, like I think it was the first week I was back in town. Had gone out with friends and I got really drunk. Yeah. And I didn't even really know Nate that well at that point, but we were living at the apartments downtown together. Yep. And I pulled up, like a friend drove me home, and I was in rough shape. And somebody called, Nate was in the apartment. He wasn't out with us. And he came downstairs and got me. This guy doesn't even know, and I'm wasted. Like he's like, I got my arms around his shoulders, and he's like walking me upstairs to our apartment. Yeah. And I just remember, I was drunk, but I remember him saying like, I'm gonna like this guy. And he just took care of me, like he didn't even know me, but we were like forced roommates because of the situation. We're working together here. You got this like staff housing. Cool. You're going to live in this apartment together. And I come home like a drunk idiot. Yeah. And, we've all been there. Dude, he just took care of me. Like, yeah. And, I'll never forget that. Like that was, cause that just exemplified who he was. He would help out. He wanted to take care of the people around him, and I love that. I love that memory of him. I'm grateful that I do remember that that night. Yeah, of course. And enough of that. But
thank you for sharing. Yeah, man. Adam, I appreciate it.
Oh yeah. Of course. I think in talking about Nate and remembering him, the anniversary of his passing is coming up in July. Yeah. Yeah. And so think it's going to be 10 years in this July. So I know,
it's crazy.
Yeah. My good buddy, Eugene
Yep.
Kim, he also was a roommate with us in that same season at the apartment. And he's been putting together, like a memorial,
I know,
hopefully just a get together in San Diego this July. So granted, it's all very tentative right now. And because of, travel restrictions and everything, we don't really know if it's going to be a possibility. But, just for those who, some of the listeners who were from the Invisible Children family or, knew Nate, and just kind of want to throw that out there. That's something that we're talking about and trying to just remember our homie, our friend. And
I'm hoping to be able to make it out there too and bring the wife and kind of meet, everybody. I never got to meet Nate personally. I mean, I'm pretty sure I met him in Chicago at the, with the rescue and all of that. So I think he was around then, but I don't know him personally. I know we've bumped shoulders and, I lived in the same apartment that we all lived in, we were talking about the apartment, the side door. I'm sure that's the one you came up, in the back corner. And, but I feel like it must have been a weird kind of you're living in the shadow of this, I came in right after his
person,
passing, So I was living, I was in Haiti when I heard about the bombing, and the loss of Nate Hinn, and that was that fall, 2010, or spring, I don't know. It's right around that time was when I right after he had passed away, and after that incident that I came into Invisible Children, and it was definitely a unique experience for sure, but one I wouldn't change. So
I definitely miss him, and it's crazy. I think it's important to mark these these anniversaries, and
so true. Yep.
Think the 10-year time mark, a decade of life, without him. But I think it's valuable for us. Yeah, just to keep supporting each other and keep remembering these people that we love and that we lost. I mean, I didn't get to know Matt.
Right.
I just remember him from being in the office at the same time. I think I was a regional manager at that point in time, working in the office while him and his team were out on the road, and
Carly and Saren and them and Pockets. I was trying to think of his first name.
Oh, okay. Well, that was his team. Yeah. Okay.
But
crazy.
Well, Adam, we're nearing the end of our time here. I've got 2.5 minutes left. I've got 2-3 questions if we can blaze through them here, and then we'll close things out and go. But you cool with that?
Yeah, sounds good.
What would you say you're most proud of to date?
What am I most proud of? Oh, man.
It's a tough one, I know. I save all the hard ones for the end.
That's a loaded question.
It is.
I say, man, I think I'm proud of risks that I've taken in life. I'm proud that I have maintained, a close-knit, family over the years. Yeah. And even living out of state for all these years, that's a hard thing. And I'm just grateful for my family and their involvement in my life,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Last question. Looking back, what advice would you tell little Adam?
Just be a little more wild. I think I said that, in high school. I think I wish I just I lived a little bit more. Just to lighten up and not be so worried of always doing the right thing or pleasing the adults in my life, and living a little bit more, So Yeah.
I love it. Thanks, man. Appreciate you coming on the show. I'm going to close things out.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you all so much for coming on the show. We appreciate you so much. Your contribution helps us tell stories just like Adam's and stories just like yours. Speaking of contributions, please visit Facebook and Instagram. There you can like and comment on our posts. If you want to go above and beyond, please share the CrazyFaceUno podcast with your friends, family, or just random strangers on the street. We're welcome to everyone. Please visit CrazyFaceUno.com today. There you can purchase items from our online store or donate. Thank you all again so much for tuning in. We love ya. Peace!